were one of the last people I actually saw on a physical stage in New York, which was just wild to me. I didn't think like of that project. I wouldn't think the adaptation of Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice would be like one of the last things I ever saw. I was so impressed to see that like throughout this entire pandemic, as somebody who like, again, I didn't really, I saw like Fun Home forever ago, and like that shit was incredible, but I haven't seen and was really impressed by the way you throughout this pandemic have just like low key adapted to the settings and like have just sort of been one of those artists who like took control of their own career. And I found that like really fascinating.
I think you realize over the years, or I've realized over the years since moving to New York and pursuing a career as a performer, that you really have to have your hands in a bunch of different pots in order to actually make a living. I think it's a bit of it's like a fantasy to think that you can just be on like work in theater and you're going to somehow pay your bills, unless you're like independently wealthy or something, or you've got like
like rich kid connection,
a trust fund or something. That's
yeah.
Cool. But if you're just like, I'm trying to just work and make a living, you really have to do a bunch of different things. So when the pandemic hit, it was a bit of I was like, all right, cool, theater's not happening now. I can just like refocus on other stuff that I was already doing, and now I could just like focus on it in a different way.
So what were you already doing?
Yeah, I was already doing like a bunch of comedy. I was part of a mod at Upright Citizens Brigade, RIP, which doesn't exist anymore.
Who is
at least
she?
the theater
I don't know
closed.
her.
Yeah, the theater closed because of the pandemic. But before that, I was part of a mod team, like a sketch team, like a house sketch team as an actor. So I was doing a bunch of comedy, and I'm also part of a musical sketch show called Shiz, where we take Broadway musical songs, and it's not like parody lyrics or anything. We just like take we keep the songs as is and write funny sketches around them. And our cast is like awesome performers. It's like Kuhu Verma and Heath Saunders and Ro Hartramp and Natalie Walker. It's like a really great cast of incredible singers and comics. So
a potpourri of baddies.
So we were like, yeah, and we were doing shows at like at UCB, at Improv Asylum. We did a residency at 54 Below for a bit. So through, theater has always been I've always done theater because I live in New York, but I also do a ton of other things. So once Broadway shut down, I was like, all right, well, let's do something else.
Yeah, this pandemic taught all of those performers versatility, I think, in some capacity. And you even see those like those stories on the 11 o'clock news where it's like Robbie Fairchild started his own flower business. Like Matt Doyle is like streaming on Twitch now. And it's like, what the fuck? Like these people, if you told me like I would be watching somebody doing ballet who like did ballet on Broadway on their own rooftop, and that would be like a prized like intimacy that I wouldn't receive in a theater, like I would never believe it. But I've always seen from the beginning of this pandemic that like the spirit either like sustains itself by either adapting during the pandemic or just persisting through it. And I think either one is like a totally reasonable response. There are lots of people who are like, I don't fuck with Zoom, I'm not gonna do it. And I'm like, I get that, because like
because it also sucks. Like it also isn't great. Suck. Like we're all trying to make stuff, we're all trying to like stay creative. With the Zoom theater, it's a challenge because there is an entire industry of film and television that already has an infrastructure and does it better. And so you're like, these theaters are like scrambling to become like media companies and sending out ring lights, and you're just like, all right, tell your roommates to shut up and hopefully, we can make something. But I applaud the hustle. I'm like, yeah, do it. Keep making it,
But I think it comes from two different places. I think the people that don't necessarily want to do it are also people that like have been on stage for a very long time and like they know that that will come back. But I think the advantage of that is that the infrastructure of Zoom, in fact, deletes the middleman in terms of developing new work. Like it's actually
Totally.
very convenient that theater artists don't have to like rent out a room for like a reading now. It's actually
Yeah.
like very convenient for playwrights to actually like hear their own work.
It also all has like, for me, it also has a limit in terms of like because I've over the pandemic have been working on some of my own writing and have done like readings with friends over Zoom, and it's really great up to a point, and then we're like, all right, now we just have to wait. Now we just need to be in a room together and make it. Like this is sort of diminishing returns if we just keep trying to recreate this live experience over Zoom. And so, and the one hand, it's been a great time to just like develop stuff, and then it gets to a point where you're like, all right, this is as baked as it's going to be for now, and you just have to be patient to wait till things open up and people can be in a room together.
In your opinion, is there anything we're gonna learn from like the digital aspects of what we've had to put ourselves through over the past year that are gonna actually impact theater?
Totally. I mean, I'm a part of a theater company called Broken Box Mime Theater. We're a mime theater company, and we've been around for like 8 years. And we had a residency through Brick Lab in Brooklyn a couple months ago, and it was like a 2-week residency, and we collaborated with deaf theater artists around the country, and it was a mix of hybrid live people in the room and then like people over Zoom, and we created this like piece of theater together that then we streamed online for 2 nights. And in those 2 nights, we had as many people watch, like physical people watch that show as we did in our entire 3-week run at Art New York like 2 years ago. And so I feel like the thing that I think is really, if our point of as storytellers is to reach as many audience members as possible, I feel like a live stream, live hybrid thing is something that I think we're all learning throughout all this. Like there should just be a way to like capture a really good version of the show. And if people want to stream it from home, they should be able to, or there should be an option to do that in addition to like a live ticket price.
Regional theaters are realizing that a lot more now with their old productions and like finally being like, wait, could we do this? And obviously, like, I actually work for one of the nonprofit theaters in New York right now, and the difficulty of having to, in an administrative way, I should clarify,
Mhm.
that the difficulty of doing that and how, and sort of like making an on-demand thing is that like it becomes the equity SAG-AFTRA thing, and it's like, are we gonna have to pay actors like the like whatever they make like from because of it? And like ultimately the answer is yes, and it's like, do they have enough money to keep it streaming? And the answer is
Totally.
no, because this is
Yeah.
again theater, not film and TV. But there's got to be a
Yeah.
more sustainable model that again is also above my pay grade. But I would say that like it is so important, and I was that fucking teenager that like found all the bootlegs before they're like just open slime tutorials on YouTube now.
Mhm.
And like it is so important that like there's so much work that the National Theater creates, and like they just take it away for like years and then they just put it back, and it's like it should be democratized in my opinion. But that's just
It
me.
should be democratized, but unfortunately, we live in capitalism, so you got to make a profit on it. Like in I feel like in an ideal world, like everything's free and everybody has equal
Sure.
access and everybody can, yeah, just watch whatever you want to watch. Like sure, but like no, everything's gonna be behind a paywall. Somebody has to be compensated for the artistic work, and I think it's a wonderful thing to strive for though. And I think it's important to like find solutions to get closer to that kind of thing though.
The streaming options are like finally opening up in some like reasonable way, because now all these regional theaters do have to like make money to survive. You have your subscription model, which like isn't even really a perfect model as it is, but
Hmm.
now eventually you're gonna have to find other like forms of revenue, and like they don't realize that they have so much capital. Like why
Yeah.
don't they should capitalize by making it more accessible to people. And like, as we've seen throughout this time, there's just been a lot of like structural changes to the theater community. And thank God you were one of those people that wasn't like sus and silent about it. Pretty much every time, like, you've been at least, and not in like a, not an overt way, but like in a practical way, like that shit is fucked up. That's it.
I mean, I think like I've been doing this for a long time now. And so, I think the sort of like veneer of like Broadway is it. Broadway is the ticket. I'm like, that's not it anymore, or it really isn't. Or I think I mean, for me, it's like slightly semantics, but I think words are important. And so like differentiating between the theater community and the Broadway community are two very different things. And I'm like, Broadway is big money, it's big business, it's Walmart, it's McDonald's, it's capitalism, it's profit. And there is no real, from my experience of the Broadway machine, is that it's not really about representation, and it's not about art, and it's not about telling the stories of marginalized people on Broadway. That's just not the truth, because at the end of the day, producers will only put something on Broadway if they think they're going to make money off of it. They're not philanthropists. They're not there to like lose money. And every now and then stuff sneaks in that does have that balances the two, that is both artistic and profitable. I was in one of those shows,
Right.
Fun Home, which was like a really beautiful experience. It was never, however, it wasn't the plan of those creatives for it to go to Broadway. It wasn't like we're writing the show because we want it to go to Broadway. They were just like, we're writing the show. It's super weird and kind of niche, but let's keep making it. And it found an audience, and it ran for about a year and a half, and then it closed because it stopped selling tickets. And so while it was a really beautiful landmark production, and a lot of audience members got to see themselves on stage in a way that they don't normally get to see themselves, we closed and Phantom is still running. So that's like, it's not like this suddenly created this infrastructure for like queer people to be on Broadway and to make Broadway salaries for years to come.
Lisa Kron was like part of that infrastructure already. That's like what is so ironic to me about all these progressive shows that come to Broadway. It's like, isn't it funny how it's always the people that like had been doing theater for a very long time off Broadway?
Yeah, Lisa was doing like the Five Lesbian Brothers, and they were just like doing weird shows downtown. And so her getting this opportunity and meeting Janine and them writing this beautiful show together was kind of a fluke. It wasn't, Lisa had never written a musical before in a traditional way.
Tourists don't come to New York for the like for the Palm, or even for like Veselka's. When they find themselves in time, that's not what's in Times Square, I guess is what I'm trying to say. What's in Times Square is fucking McDonald's.
It's McDonald's. Like, and now it's literally a mall. They're like Times Square is turning into a mall with all the stores are there, and you can like go to Old Navy and then like go see a show. So
what it does remind me of is the year of the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, when all the banks like were going rainbow, or even like after SCOTUS like made gay marriage legal, they the playbills also started going rainbow for June. And it's like, no, I see exactly what the fuck you're doing. And that's like that happens. I mean, that happened a lot last June with the Wicked shit. And with like everybody scrambling to like evaluate their whiteness and their complicity. And now I really do have hope for this industry standard group of producers. And I don't know if you know much about that, but
just peripherally.
They're basically dismantling and like decolonizing these commercial practices that like sort of not only withhold information about like producing from like the next generation, but also creating like a more like socialized model. But the thing is, it takes people stepping out of their way to do that. And
Yeah.
like that's what nobody wants to admit, like the Amy Pascals of the, or I guess it's more of the movie industry, but like those sort of like heavy hitters, like I can't really say Scott Rudin anymore. He's out of the way.
Yeah. Bye, Scott.
Bye, girl. Which is honestly like, I mean, the Beetlejuice shit fucks me up. I've never seen Beetlejuice. I
Yeah.
don't know anything about the movie. I have never heard the music, but I know enough that like I keep seeing, like when I was living in New York, I just keep seeing people on the street wearing Beetlejuice shit. And like people were caring about it years after it came out. Maybe it wasn't complete. I mean, my guess is like, maybe it wasn't completely filling the Winter Garden's like enormous fucking theater.
That's a big house.
It's a vicious house, but like there has to, that's just a prime example. It's not like Beetlejuice deserved to be there longer than another show or anything like that. A lot of people said it would. I don't really know it, so I can't say. But
Yeah.
like, if that was like a show about like, if that was a strange loop, that shit, people would not be fucking happy about it. That's for
Yeah.
fucking sure. And like, we
Yeah.
need to be able to make space and like allocate, like give people the space to create, as hard as that might be, you know.
Yeah, and I think those spaces exist. It's just not on Broadway, and like you can go support artists who are on the fringes and who are doing stuff if you'd like leave 42nd Street and go out to the communities and support that work because it's out there and people are doing it.
Yeah.
The thing is though, those people aren't making as much money as the people who are doing it on Broadway. So that's what it's really about. Like it's about cash. It's about, you want to be on Broadway because you can make enough money. You make more money. Like if I wanted to, I could go, I mean, I'm making shit in my house by myself in my apartment. No one's paying me to do that, but I'm having a great time. But you have to subsidize that with like then doing shows and doing projects that like pay you actual money.
What made
So
you like want to make all these fucking impressions on your reel? Like that's what's driving me. Like, where does these like little specific ideas? It must come from like
well,
the improv background, but like,
yeah,
what
I
was the
mean,
impetus?
honestly, when I first moved to New York, I moved in 2009, and the very first thing I did was take improv at UCB. So I was like gonna be a comedian. I was doing comedy. I was on indie teams doing improv around the city. I also sing, and so I was auditioning for musical theater stuff. And then it got to a point where about a year, well, I graduated college, and then I did
You
this
wanted to
program
be a
called,
doctor or some shit,
yeah,
right?
I was a chemistry major in college at Tufts University,
Okay.
and hated it. I just fucking hated it. And then a friend was like music directing a production of Children of Eden, and she was like, "Oh, you sing, right? You should audition for the show." And I was like, "Okay." So like I auditioned for it, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so fun." And I had done theater in high school, but never really seriously. Like my family's not artistic at all. I grew up like super conservative Christian, and like just the idea like Broadway and theater as a job was like not a thing. That was like not on my, it's still not on my parents' radar. They have like no idea what I do with my life. There was like,
You're gonna go
pagan,
back to
do they pay?
Tufts.
Like, do you pay you enough money? Can you pay your bills? Like, yes. Okay, fine. But like a year after school, I went to Springboard NYC, just this program through the American Theater Wing.
Yeah.
And the woman who ran it at the time, Randy Luderman, gave me some advice of like, I was like, I really want to move to New York. I really want to be in New York City. All my friends are moving to New York. But I know that in Boston, there's like these things, it was called the Stage Source auditions. They were like, you audition for all the Boston area theaters at one time, and then you get a bunch of callbacks. And like, I know a lot of people go there and can get like a bunch of jobs lined up for the whole year. I was like, I've got this audition coming up, but I don't know if I should do that. And I'm like, I really want to go to New York. And then she was like, well, you know, New York isn't going anywhere. and you didn't go to like a conservatory. So if you can like get a bunch of experience under your belt, that might just prepare you even more when you actually move to New York. It's like, okay, so I did the stage force auditions, and I booked like a bunch of jobs for that year in Boston, just like boom, 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 one thing right after the other. And it was awesome. It was just like, I got to learn a bunch. I got to save a bunch of money. I was living at home in Lawrence. I grew up a little north of Boston.
Okay. How
So I
long
was
were
like,
you at home for?
I was there for a year.
Oh, okay.
I was waiting tables at TGI Fridays and then doing shows in Boston for that entire year. And even during that time, I would drive down. I was insane. I can't do that. I can't. I like look back now. I'm like, how the fuck did I do that? Because I would either drive down to New York for auditions if I saw that stuff was going on. Hair was on Broadway at the time. I was like, I'm gonna be in Hair, and In the Heights was happening on Broadway.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I really want to go to New York. So I would like either drive overnight and like sleep in my car and then like go to an audition, or I would like take an overnight bus and like sleep at Port Authority and then like go to an audition.
Wow. Asking for a friend, like, where did you park? Because some of us.
I would park in the Upper West Side because I had some friends who lived in the Upper West Side.
Okay.
So I would like park it by their place and then take the subway down.
Wow.
It was insane. Like, I think back on that time, I'm like, God, I was just so, I mean, I just wanted it so much. I was like, and I had this sort of like blinders, like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. So yeah. So then, you know, in addition to, so I started, when I moved to New York, I started auditioning for a bunch of stuff. And one of those things was In the Heights. And so I was doing a bunch of comedy, doing a bunch of improv and paying to do improv, because that's what you have to do. You have to pay to take classes, and you have to pay for rehearsal space, and you got to pay for coaches and all that stuff. And then I got called in to audition for the national tour of In the Heights. And so I went to that audition. I had like 7 callbacks, and then I ended up joining the first national tour in the ensemble. And so that's kind of where so I kind of put comedy aside, because I was like, oh, there's this other thing, musical theater, that like pays me money.
Yes.
And I need to make money in order to live in New York. So it was always there. Honestly, like, I always loved doing comedy, and anybody who knows me knows I'm a big fucking goofball. So
How did you meet John Leguizamo?
Oh man. So okay. So this is how shit happens. I don't actually like rarely ever get jobs that I love through auditions. It's through just like happenstance, just like right place, right time, luck and talent, you know. I was my very first job, acting job in New York, was through Pregones Theater Company. It's a Puerto Rican theater company in the Bronx. And a friend of mine had worked with them and was like, you're in the city now, you should audition for these people. And I got hired to do this show called Texting for Life. That was a forum theater piece that we would take to schools in the South Bronx. It was like for like assemblies and stuff. It was all about against anti-domestic violence, specifically sexting, which was like a big thing at the time. Several kids had committed suicide because of bullying that happened with sharing nudes, right? So I was a part of Pregones, and a few years later, John was writing this play. At the time, it was called Pain in the Aztec, which then evolved into Kiss My Aztec, the musical. And he was just like, I want an ensemble of actors to help me develop the show. He reached out to Rosalba Rolon, who's the artistic director at Pregones. And so she called a bunch of us who were part of the ensemble to be like, hey, I have this project. It's just to do a reading. And then we all showed up, and it was John Leguizamo. We were all just like, oh my God, what?
That's crazy.
You're the best. And so that was like 7 years ago. And so over time, it's evolved into now this big old farce of a musical.
Are there plans to take it to Broadway?
I mean, that's the hope. There's hope for it to do another out of town tryout, and then hopefully have a commercial life. You know, things are just so up in the air in terms of when that'll happen, who will support it. I'm not involved in those discussions because I'm not writing it. When we went to the opening, Tara Rubin was like, Joelle, I had no idea that you were so funny. And I was like, you know, in my head, I was like, haha, thanks. But then I was like, oh, that's also not her fault, because no one's writing comedic roles for Latinos. They just don't exist in the scope of musical theater, unless it's like a stereotype. Yeah, unless you're like and I trust me, I've done a lot of those readings, and a lot of those readings I was just like, this is garbage, make it better. And then they're like, thank you so much, and then I was not called back. So I was just like, I'm not going to stand for this. Like, this is so shitty. Like, you can write this better if you wanted to. So, you know, that's then why I was like, oh, I guess a lot of people don't know this part of me because they don't get to see it, because I don't get to do it very often. So that's kind of how it all, like, then over the pandemic, that's something I was like, I just love comedy. I love making people laugh. I like character work and stuff. So why not do more of that?
I always found it so upsetting that like people of color, especially in comedy, either have to like, because like you said about like this UCB world, you really do have to pay to be into it. And you have to check a lot of boxes to be like a lot more successful about it. I personally could not really pay for more like than $500 just because I just don't have that money. And like honestly, anybody who does, like, more power to you. Like, take that access, walk through that door. That's wonderful. But like the improv world has had for so long so much trouble like making space for like other artists commercially. And now like there's this whole, and I want to know more about it. I don't necessarily think like you're not like a stand-up per se, but like there's a lot of like queer stand-up just going on in Brooklyn right now with like
Totally.
seeing people just sort of intersect as queer comedians also in the theater. Like that is just a far too recent thing that has happened. And like the roots are of course in like people like the Hot Peaches who were like drag queens in like the 70s, but like now seeing like Larry Owens just like also being a hysterical stand-up, or like even Bowen
like
Yang.
Cola Scola.
Yeah.
Like it's a wonderful like time for this. Like it's kind of a cool like cabaret is like kind of cool.
Yeah.
when it wasn't for a long time. And like when I was starting out, I mean, that was another thing. When I was starting out doing improv, it was like very much straight white guys. That was like that was the thing. And then there weren't a lot of gay people. There weren't a lot of people of color that were performing on weekend teams. So that was part of it too. I was like, I'm really enjoying this. I don't necessarily feel myself represented in the, or it's not necessarily my sense of humor that's like being championed by the institution. So when I took a break from comedy for a while, returning to it, I was just like, oh, I love what's happening these days. Like, I love that it's like super queer and like there's like lots of music and genre bending, you know, and yeah. And that's actually something I've been doing over the pandemic. I'm a part of a program at Ars Nova called Camp.
Yes.
Where it's 8 projects and we're all developing like I'm essentially like making a little comedy special that'll premiere in June.
And is it more the form of stand-up or is it like sketch?
So it's just like beatboxing and layered vocals, and it's just gonna be like a night of like very stupid songs that deal with like, you know, with being Puerto Rican, being ex-Pentecostal, being gay, like all that stuff.
Oh, lit. That's so fucking cool, man. And like this DJ, this looping stuff you've been doing, is it like something you learned during the pandemic, or is that something you had before?
I learned it during the pandemic. I've always been a huge fan of it. I've always been like, oh, it's so cool. Grace McLean, I don't know if you know Grace,
No.
a wonderful performer and writer. She had a show at Lincoln Center in the Green last year.
Oh, yeah.
But before that, I know her from like I did the Williamstown Theater Festival. I was an
Yes.
apprentice there, and then I was part of their non-equity company. So, geez, like back in my apprentice year, I met Grace, and I've just been a big fan of hers for so long. And she would make music on a loop station, and I'd go see her shows at like Rockwood and stuff, and I was like, oh my god, that's so cool.
Oh my God.
And so then, uh, when the pandemic hit, I was like, I was just like itchy to do something. I was like, I want to try something new. And my buddy Brian Quijada is a writer and performer.
Yes. His
And
work
so
at Louisville was incredible.
yeah, so I mean, he's all that's what he does. He is like the boss loop station. And we did Oedipus El Rey together at the Public.
Right.
So we became good friends there. And then I would like go over to his house and we would just like hang out and have some beer and like make music on his little loop station thing. I was like, this is so cool. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get one, and I'm just gonna like experiment with it and see if it's cool.
A lot of what we ask like actors that at least we're working up until the pandemic is like a lot about auditioning, and it seems like you've had all sorts of different opportunities to audition and submit yourself for different mediums, whether it be
Yeah.
comedy or theater. So like how did auditioning change like when you started, since you started, and like what do you enjoy about it and what do you not fuck with?
I mean, I really like the everything's remote now. So now you just gotta have a ring light and a blank wall and a reader, and like then you're good to go. And there are times where like I kind of prefer that. Like I kind of like that I can just do as many takes as I want and watch it back and try it again. And I feel like I can present my best self. Now, I'll with a caveat that I already know these casting directors. I've already met them in person before the pandemic hit. So it's not like this is the only exposure to me that they're having. So I understand that it's also different if you've never been in the room with these people before. Like I have history with these people, so it's not like it's a cold call or something. They're familiar with my work. They've seen me in person. We have a rapport. So part of for me, I'm like, this is great. I love this.
Yeah.
What I miss though is just like the like community around that. Like I just loved that I would like, sometimes run into a friend I hadn't seen in a while, and then we just like go catch up and have coffee or like walk to the next audition together and on our way. Now it's like you can't have those like random experiences or like random New York afternoons that would normally happen. It's all very like you have to kind of plan everything.
When you first got representation, like are you still with the same person at the very least, and how have you managed to like maintain
Yeah,
and build those like gatekeeping kind of relationships?
totally. My very first agent, I got the In the Heights tour without an agent. I was just going to open calls and I went to a bunch of EPAs. I was that guy that was at every fucking one at 4:30 in the morning and would sign up and wait all day. So that was, first of all, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that is a humane way to treat people. However, that was the reality back then, and that's what I was doing at the time. When that tour ended, a friend of mine who was in the tour was represented by an agency called Block, and they're like a musical theater dance agency. So he put us in touch, and I met them. They're like, cool, let's work together. And that wasn't a good fit. It wasn't right, because I'm not a dancer. I'm not a chorus boy. I'm not a like super trained dancer, music video dancer. Like they kept on trying to they would submit me to these dance calls, and I'd be like, this is just, I feel like such an idiot. And it got to the point where I would leave some of these auditions because I was like, this is bad. I'm not presenting my best self. You're not getting the best version of me. this is fine.
Well, that
And
is really good to know, considering
yeah,
like recent conversations I've had. I'm glad you're telling me that.
yeah, I mean, so much of it is just like right place, right time, and then just be like a good person. Like just be nice to work with, especially in theater, because you end up spending so much time together. Just like don't be a dick, be on time, know your shit, be prepared. Don't like there's already like it's already a hard enough job to begin with. Like don't be the
Yeah,
person who makes it. It's also not about you. Like it's also about like the story and like
yeah,
make it support the artist, especially in a place like Sundance, where it's just like as the actors, all you have to do is just like, where are the pages? I need to read them. Is this good? We're done. I'm gonna go hike a gorgeous mountain. You know what I mean? Like if you're not
yeah.
having a good time there, then like what's your problem?
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of the industry that I've seen so far has been real. It's been mostly 50-50, I would say, of people putting and companies putting their ego first before their artists, and in
Mhm.
times of outrage, it shows. And then what I've learned during this pandemic is like a lot of this industry is like finding your chosen family for the most part. And most of how you find your chosen family is through those really like random, surprising, serendipitous encounters that happen.
Totally.
And that is a prime example of that. And you bond more with people that you have more formidable relationships with than just like a, a gatekeeper will come and go. Like that is just like, and that also comes with like being a pleasant fucking person and like knowing your shit and all that.
Yeah, and like speaking of like gatekeeping, I think that there definitely is a wall in terms of as an actor trying to get seen for TV and film. Like you need to have an agent. You need somebody who can submit you for stuff who will get you in the door. With the theater world, I actually found that like a lot of the appointments and stuff that I was getting was like not really because of the agents I had at the time. It was just because of like people I had met or open calls I would go to. Even though I had an agent, I was still going to open calls because I was just like, if they're not getting me appointments, then I'm going to go do it myself.
Right.
Um, and then through that workshop of Fun Home, this Meg Simon, who used to be the VP of casting for Warner Brothers, she's now retired, but she cast Sundance. And again, I didn't go through her to get cast in Fun Home. I got cast in it because Janine and Lisa recommended me for it. And so she was like, how have you never auditioned for me? How have I never seen you? And I was like, well, I have this agent. They were like, who is that? And I was like, this block agency. She was like, I don't know who that is. Um,
Wow.
and I was like, and then
Wow.
I was like, can you help me? And so then she like actually like, she was like, here are people who I really like, who I think you'd be a good match with. And a recommendation from her came really highly regarded when she made that connection with these agents. And now I'm with BRS Gage, who are the people I've been with for a while. And they're
Word.
awesome. And it was like kind of night and day. It was like, oh, they're like, cool, we really like you and we're big fans. And then they immediately started getting me appointments for stuff that I wasn't getting before.
That is
Um,
terrific.
and it felt like they were fans of mine. I felt like with this other representation, I feel like I was constantly having to prove myself. I had to constantly be like, I'm good. I swear I'm good. I'm good. Put me out, put me in, coach. You know, like we're trying, we're trying. Whereas they were like, no, you're awesome. Here are all these open doors. Then it's up to you. Once those doors open, what are you going to do with it?
You are working on this incredible, exciting new project with Huntington Theater Company and
Yeah.
the Black Beans project with
Yeah.
Melinda Lopez, written and performed
Hmm.
by you two. And your director is Jamie Castaneda. And
Hmm.
it's streaming from May 11th to the 30th for on-demand streaming at huntingtontheater.org. And
Hell
I'm
yeah.
curious to see what it's like and if you have any thoughts about it, all that.
Totally. The Huntington was like I did a production of Pirates exclamation point. It was a like an adaptation of Pirates of Penzance,
Okay.
like 11 years ago. This is like before I moved to New York. I was like a local hire in Boston, and I was part of the ensemble, and like I understudied the lead Frederick, and like I, so that was like the beginning of my relationship with the Huntington. And then over the years I've like gone back to do readings and stuff, and one of the readings I did was a play by Melinda Lopez called Becoming Cuba, and I've just been like a really big fan of hers for so long. And so a couple months, when was this, like last fall, I got reached out to by the Huntington and Melinda to be like, hey, we want to do a project. We don't really know what it is, but would you want to like hop on a call and chat? So Melinda and I chatted with Charles, who's one of the artistic, what's his title's like artistic associate or something at the Huntington. And we or new play development. Anyway, we were like, what do we want to do? So we like kind of were batting around a bunch of ideas. Then we started just talking about like cooking and recipes, and how like during the pandemic it's been an interesting time. Like I've like called my mom a few times to like talk me through Puerto Rican recipes, just because I just like missed food from home. And
Yeah.
so then Melinda was like, yeah, I kind of feel similarly. So that's where the show kind of evolved from. It was like about food, and then a really big staple in Cuban cuisine is black beans. Black Cubans make like the best black beans. So we wrote this like narrative play around a brother and sister who meet up over Zoom to talk through our mom's favorite recipe. And as we cook and prepare the meal together, like drama and hilarity unfolds. So
Amazing.
you kind of watch us like prepping all the ingredients and then like actually cooking, and while we're cooking we're talking, and then while it's simmering we're having a conversation. And so if you wanted to, the audience could like cook along with us,
A word.
because
Okay.
it kind of happens in real time. And when you buy a ticket, you'll get a recipe card.
We ask this of like every guest. What do
Mhm.
you think theater is going to look like when we get on the other side of this? What can you conceive that would
Hmm.
at least be different or the same?
Harsh and realistic and unfiltered interrogation of the status quo. I think there's going to be stuff that's going to be like, we're just going to fucking go there, and we're going to not pull any punches, and we're going to just like really, really get in the mess. And then I think on the exact opposite is just like joy. I think there's just like stuff that's just fun. I mean, like if SpongeBob the musical came out now, I think people would just be like, thank God. Please give me, I just want to sit in a theater and be happy for 2 hours,
I hear that. Yeah.
because I think there's like there we've just been like sitting in limbo for so long that I think there's going to be a desire to have like a communal experience of joy, because we've just been sitting in this like isolated yet globally communal experience of tragedy for so long. I think we're just going to want to like be in a room together and laugh and just
Yeah.
like have a good time.
And I'll say, like MCC, for example, it does a really great job of finding that balance. And I think, like, even when Jordan Cooper came on here to talk about uh, like his work that he was doing, he talked about how important it is that, like, if you're going to use or at least utilize trauma, like in a setting of in a play of any capacity in any art form, it has to come with like some balance of nutrition of joy. And like
Yeah.
MCC is the first play back in the fall, like is like that, for example, a play that's just like a comedy, and it's like,
Yeah.
thank God, like we can actually like celebrate that. And I think that's like exactly the direction that it needs to be. It needs to be that balance of joy, and that joy can still be inclusive and like still challenge the status quo. It doesn't have to be the same like revival of the Music Man or anything. And like
But
it
also
can,
like, yeah, it doesn't have to be the revival of Music Man, but also if they just want to do a revival of the Music Man starring Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster, because it's gonna make buckets and buckets of money, like do your dumbass revival of the Music Man. I'm going to go to theaters that are speaking to communities that I personally am more interested in, you know, and like I'm like there isn't just, I don't think it's just one or the other, or
right.
I just want to like decenter Broadway as what makes an artist or a person valid, which I think that's what I think sometimes people get caught up in, like if it's not on Broadway then it doesn't exist.
And resilient work too, and the resilience is really what makes it for me. Like even, you know, I watched Circle Jerk, for example.
Oh,
I
so
saw
good.
that. It was one of the craziest fucking things I've ever seen in my life.
We're
It
so
took me like
cool.
a minute to understand it, and like I have my opinions about it, but I inherently respect it because the things that they were able to accomplish night after night, and they actually have mastered the model and they got help, you know, granted, but they mastered the model of like preserving their work and releasing it and distributing it and like creating those plans for people. But like even with Labyrinth Theater Company, for example, I don't know why people aren't like howling in the streets about how dope they are.
They like veered off the path for a while, and like in the last couple of years have the artistic leadership has gone back and is kind of going back to its roots of being lab for Latino actor base, and that is sort of their mission. And honestly, that's again money.
We're starting to at least find alternatives to capitalism in this country, and I think that's going to bleed into the theater. And I look forward to seeing all of your incredible fucking work when it does. This camp
Thanks,
residency at
man.
Ars Nova is lit. This Black Beans project is lit. We even talk about the
Be great.
downstairs party. That shit is
Oh
hilarious.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank
y'all are
you.
amazing.
Those are my
Yeah.
friends from UCB. We were on a mod team before, and then we started a new team that's actually in a new theater called Squirrel NYC,
You are part of
which
that shit.
is
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is a lot of the people who are part of the UCB community who are now wanting to rebuild a comedy theater that is transparent, that pays its artists,
Equitable.
that is equitable, that classes are cheap, that it's not about pay to play in the way that the UCB model used to be. Just to make, like, we can take this time to learn and make a better culture around comedy. I think before it was like all about paying your dues, and like it was just expected that you like are broke all the time. And so like no, we should pay our artists. So it's been really fun to be on like the ground floor of building this new community and to have a place to try stuff, you know, have like a place to make funny shit and like um be a part of a comedy community that's trying to uh push push forward representation and equity and transparency, and in an industry that historically hasn't been.
Thank you so much. And like whenever you have shit, you're always welcome to come through. You always have a seat at the table.
Yes.
Yo, take care, man.